Welcome to the Ad Nauseam podcast, where classical gourmands everywhere can finally get their fill. Join us for a delectable discussion of Greco-Roman civilization stretching from the Minoans and Mycenaeans through the Renaissance and right down to the present. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here are your hosts, Dr. David Noe and Dr. Jeff Winkle.
Welcome, Ad Nauseam listeners, to episode 184 of our humble little podcast. As always, my name is Dr. David C. Noe. The C stands for Krabby, and I am here in the basement, the bunker, the vomitorium central with all the arachnids, and my good friend and passable co-host, Dr. Jeffrey T. Winkle. The T stands for...
I think the T stands for passable.
Passable. The T stands for can't spell.
Yeah. Right,
How you doing, Jeff?
Good. I'm feeling passable today.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll accept that.
All right.
Very lukewarm statement.
Yeah.
From the other side of the table.
What can I say?
Yeah. No, I'm doing well.
Yes.
Kind of running around as like a headless chicken these days. I've less than 2 weeks, I'll be in Greece.
Wow.
With a group of 11 students from my institution, and but there's always something to take care of.
Okay.
Yeah,
so what are some of the things that you're taking care of?
Well, there's
the business and working overtime.
There
you might
is.
say.
I mean, there are kind of problems with airport transfers.
Okay. So you're flying from Grand Rapids to...
We are not. We're taking a transfer to O'Hare and flying from O'Hare to...
So the
overseas.
autobus
Yes.
to O'Hare.
Yes.
Not Midway.
Not Midway.
With all the alternative reality
oh, yeah, that's right.
eateries. Right. Burger Queen, things like that.
Right, yeah.
And then flying from O'Hare to
Frankfurt.
And then in Germany, if I'm not mistaken.
Frankfurt to Athens, yes.
Okay.
Yes, but there are, I'm going, I think only one of my students has any type of overseas experience.
All right.
And so I'm getting lots of questions from some anxious travelers.
What would be an example? How many pairs of socks do I need to take? Is a passport optional? Things like that?
I mean, questions about that. I got a question like, what's the weather going to be like? I mean, we have these wonderful tools at our fingertips that could probably answer that question better than I can.
You mean the internet?
the internets, yeah.
Interesting.
But, a lot of that, just kind of, there are things that are, getting emails from overseas and saying, well, the museum is going to be closed on this day you're playing. Right. Would you want to reroute here? Just heard, did you hear there was an earthquake in Greece?
I did not
yesterday.
Hear that.
Yes. No, I mean, it didn't seem to be all that serious comparatively. But
okay. What does Mr. Richter say?
I forget. It was very low on Mr. Richter's scale.
Okay.
But I got an alert from my study away leader and say, hey, this has happened.
Right.
Be aware of I guess, possible earthquakes, but I guess that's...
You knew that before.
Yes, I mean, it's a very earthquake-prone country.
That's correct.
But, yeah.
How many impressionable young minds are traveling with you on this
11
expedition? 11.
So it's a small group.
That's right.
Compared to the size of the groups that you and I used to take at our previous institution.
Yes, would you all fit in a small rowboat, you think?
We could.
On the way to Egina, for example?
And I mean, that's a cost-saving measure as well. But instead of
Right.
taking one of the ferries, you just hop in a rowboat and you row your way across the Gulf.
That's right. So are you going to get your own room in the various hostels and so forth? Remember the hotel, what is it, the Antonios in Olympia?
Right, my favorite. Yeah,
yes, with that elevator that was having intestinal troubles all the time.
My heart broke a little bit when I got our hotel list.
Right.
We are not staying at the Antonios. So.
But you will go to Olympia.
Yes, we are. Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
And how long is this trip?
It is 12 days.
Okay.
Yep. And so we're going to do kind of the usual loop. Down, start in Athens, go through the south. Mycenae, Eleusis,
Corinth,
Napoleon. We're skipping Corinth. They gave me a choice between Eleusis and Corinth, and I chose Eleusis.
Yeah.
And then over to Olympia, up to Delphi, Thermopylae,
Antirio, across the bridge,
across the big suspension bridge.
Yep.
Yes. Yep.
Very nice. Delphi,
of course. And then
Arachova.
We're actually staying in Arachova.
Very nice.
And then kind of the farthest north we'll get is Thermopylae.
You're going to go to the site.
Mm-hmm.
Beware.
Yeah.
Of what might be wafting off the sea there at Thermopylae. Be careful.
I will stand on the hill of the last stand, and I will sniff the air and see if I can get a whiff of that brackish tang.
There we go. Well, that's exciting, Jeff.
Yeah.
I'm excited that you'll be doing that.
Yeah, and I'm eager to give a report to our audience once I get back. Yep.
Nothing could be finer than to visit Greece in the summertime.
Indeed, yes. For sure. Before it gets too beastly hot.
Yes, oppressively warm.
Yep. And how are you doing, Dave?
I'm doing well. Yes, I'll be doing some traveling too, as it turns out.
You're always on the move. Where are you off to this time?
I'm going to be going to Africa.
Oh, you were there.
Yeah.
You were there not that long
In
ago.
November, I went to Uganda and taught some Greek. This time, I'm going to go to South Africa.
Nice.
In June, and I'm going to be lecturing on Theodore Beza and the topic of justification.
Fantastic.
So I was invited to speak at a little conference there, so I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
Apparently, the South Africans in Cape Town, that's where I'm headed, consume a lot of beef.
Do they really?
So that's right up my alley.
Well, I mean,
so.
that's a draw right there.
Exactly. Sign me up, I would say. So I'll be talking about Theodore Beza and his creedal understanding of baptism.
Wow.
That's my brief. So I have a few weeks to get that paper all written. And I thought, if I run out of time and I don't know what to say, I could just, I don't know, press a button and play some old podcast episodes.
There you go.
See how that goes.
And take a nap.
There you go.
Right, exactly. Now, that's a long flight.
Yeah, it is, I guess. We're going to go through Amsterdam and then from Amsterdam to Cape Town.
Man.
I don't know. It's several days, something like that.
I hope there's some good movies playing on the plane.
Yeah. Do you remember when we had Ross King, the fabulous Ross King, as our guest on the podcast? And you remember what he said? He said something so memorable that helped me feel a lot better about myself as a student.
Is that I'm sure it was memorable, but I don't remember.
Okay.
What did he say?
Well, I just asked him, what do you do on the plane? And he said, I always take along an excellent book.
Yeah.
And for the first 20, people can go back and listen to this episode. And for the first 20 or 30 minutes, I make a good faith, sincere, earnest effort to read the book.
Yeah.
But then I give up and watch movies the rest of the time. So I thought, if Ross King can get away with that, he's brilliant. I shouldn't feel too bad about watching Mission Impossible 11 or something like that.
Right, exactly.
Speaking of which, today's the day.
Of what?
Where they released that biopic on our podcast.
They did?
Yeah, Mission Impossible.
Mission Impossible? That's about us?
Can two dull former classicists manage to entice a small audience of devoted listeners?
Yeah.
And then you cue the theme music, right?
Dun, 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 dun.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Starring Tom Cruise as a young Jeff Winkle.
Oh, man. Exactly. Yeah, I can see that.
So are you gonna watch it?
No.
It involves a lot of sprinting.
No, I have to admit, I have never seen one of those.
Not even one?
No, I mean, I've heard that they're good, or at least the first ones were good.
I think they're quite good. They're not called Mission Passable, you know.
I think I just I can't do action films anymore. I don't. No. I mean, a guy hanging off of a helicopter. I
That's not appealing to you?
It's not.
Well, you want something dark and film noir. You want violence and crime and failed romance.
Now you're talking.
No, let's have some explosions. Let's have some unrealistic expectations and people getting out of these scrapes by the skin of their teeth. That's excitement.
Yeah, I mean, maybe
makes the popcorn flow.
I guess. I mean, I think for that to work, you have to see it on the big screen. Oh yeah, right. And not just stream it at home.
So that's where we're headed right after this.
Maybe maybe you can talk me into going to see Mission Impossible. What, they're 19 now?
I don't know. I don't remember the last movie we saw together, but it was forgettable.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
So we have a bit of a shout out today, don't we, Jeff?
We do. Man, this comes from one José Jimenez.
Yes, and I have to say, of all the many shout outs we have gotten, this is definitely one of them. I especially liked the subject heading, in which he quotes from Virgil, Felix qui potuit rerum cognoscer causas.
Yeah.
Happy is the one who can understand the reason why things are. So that was brilliant, Jose. You started off very nicely by putting that Virgilian tag in your subject heading. Then he gives us a really full, excellently organized, almost AI level, I would say, letter here where he talks about his journey from a kind of a workaday fellow in thermodynamics and so forth into the world of classics.
Yeah.
It's really quite remarkable.
It is. He strikes me as a Renaissance man.
That's right.
And I was really impressed with that. I mean, we don't have time on the show to kind of get into every piece of his response, but the detail.
It'd be several episodes.
It would be. But let me just read the beginning of this. He says, let me start. He says, Dear Jeff and Dave, let me start with a great big thank you. Your podcast, along with other podcasts and lectures that you can access nowadays, has really provided me with something that has been missing in my life.
So see, that's where he lost me.
Right? What?
When he said your podcast, and then that part about other podcasts and lectures.
Oh, yeah.
Why do you need other podcasts and lectures? What have we not given you, Jose, that you really want?
Yeah, now I'm disappointed.
I think so, too.
He says, truly, I'll tell you why. He says, I'm a 48-year-old dad of 3 from Ontario, Canada, currently living in Toronto. My undergrad was in engineering and my master's was in accounting, and I currently work in finance. Although I truly did enjoy learning about differential equations, thermodynamics, and the like in my undergrad years.
Let's pause there a minute, if I may.
Yeah.
So remember when we were talking about Machen and ancient mathematics?
Yes.
And you were tempted to fall asleep?
Yes.
Yeah, not José.
No, not
He
José.
was there.
Right.
He was hanging on every variable.
I am glad that there are people out there who are
Okay.
on the edge of their seat when it comes to differential equations.
All right, continue.
He says, and further enjoyed learning about economics, taxes, and auditing and the like in my postgrad years. I did feel pangs of jealousy of my English major friends who spent their early 20s reading classic literature with experts.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this guy understands the balance.
He does.
Yes.
He really gets it.
Yeah.
And then it's just so interesting. But I want to read this part here because this is where the shout out really gets interesting. He says, I write this email as I sit in a lounge watching my 15-year-old daughter finish her horse riding lesson. These horse lessons are around a 1-hour drive from my house, etc., etc., etc. Listening to your podcast ad nauseum. The first time she heard Dr. Noe recite Latin, she actually spoke up and said, Dad, etc., etc. I told her and she rejoined with, etc. Anytime my kids say stuff like this, I feel like I'm winning in my life. Nice job, José. We are with you.
I love it. Yes.
You. So this shout out is a twofer.
It is.
Or actually a threefer. This is like an 8-legged shout out right here.
Okay, yeah.
Because we're not only saying hello to José.
We're saying shout out to his daughter.
His daughter, yes. Sadie.
And the horse.
And the horse. So shout out to that horse, Bare Necessities.
Yes.
I understand it's 4 legs of, I don't know, equestrian fury pounding and galloping across the Ontarian plain.
Magnificent.
Yes, this one young woman must be like a Camilla.
Camilla, that's the woman who runs across the tops of the grain, right?
Faster than any horse. Right. She's killing Trojans on the Rutulian plains there in Aeneid Book 9 and so forth. So, thank you, José, for writing in. Thank you for all the nice things that you said about the podcast. Thank you for compelling your offspring to listen to us in long car rides. Good move. And a special thanks to the horse.
Definitely.
Bare necessities.
Bare necessities. One more thing about José. Another thing I found really inspiring about his note was his determination to tackle James Joyce Ulysses.
Yeah.
Which is a book that
I skipped that.
I've tried twice.
Yeah.
My opinion has always been that 95% of the people who claim to have read Ulysses have never actually done it. But he talks about going through it chapter by chapter, using commentaries, using podcasts to actually
incredible.
And then not only that, but then working his way backwards through Joyce back to Homer itself. It's amazing.
It's incredible.
It's great.
Yep. So thanks, José. We hope you continue to listen. I would like you to contact us again if you're willing. We'll, of course, respond in writing to this, but let us know which of the episodes you're really keyed on. Which ones did you like the most?
Indeed.
Or maybe the ones you liked the least? Speaking of ones that he might like the least.
Yeah, really?
What are we talking about today, Jeff?
You don't think José's going to dig this?
I don't know.
All right. But we are talking about, we're trying to determine at some level what is the best Greek textbook.
Yes.
Yep. And we're going to walk through a number of these, take a look at them from the old to the recent.
Yes.
And kind of see where they fall.
And it's going to probably be a 2-parter because this is a huge task. It's a big task. And thankfully, we're ready to go. As I look down the table there, I see Jeff has not 1, but 2 opened bottles of Diet Coke. So
no, one is still closed.
Okay, so he's ready. He's caffeinated and ready to go.
Yes, I am ready. And Dave, you've got a whole 2-liter down there. Wait.
Yes, I do. I don't know if the people can hear the sounds coming through the microphone. This is not one of those rip-off drinks.
No.
I'm used to drinking Dr. Thunder and Dr. M.
Right.
This is the real thing.
That's real. You got the Dr. Pepper
That's
there.
right. No Mr. Pibb or Mrs. Pibb for me.
It looks like you've been drawing that all day. Just walking around the house.
This is non-alcoholic. You have to stay hydrated when you do a couple hours worth of talking.
Yes, and nothing hydrates better than Dr. Thunder.
There you go. So we're going to begin with a quote from the inimitable Matthew Arnold. 19th century English literary critic Matthew Arnold, 1822 to 1888. And he says, quote, "The invaluable works which the Hellenic genius left behind, the Iliad, the Odyssey, the dramas of Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides, the philosophy of Plato and Aristotle, these are the true foundation of all real culture."
All right.
You in?
I'm in.
Okay.
Yeah.
I agree with that assessment.
I'll follow that lead.
And you know who also thought that?
Who?
Every Roman that ever wrote anything.
That's true.
Like Horace, whom you quoted in the last episode about Rome captured Greece, and then
in turn was
wild
captured.
Rome was taken captive by
Yes.
Greece.
Yes, indeed.
Exactly.
Yep.
So that's the entree into today's episode. And as we start out, Jeff, I'd like you to talk a little bit about your own background and your experience, first in learning Greek, and then we'll get around to the topic of teaching Greek.
Yes.
Second, we're going to make a little bit of an argument here, or I am, and you can push back, you can mock and ridicule, as is your wont, about why people should not set out to learn only New Testament Greek. Why this is backward, this is wrong-headed, and ultimately destructive of what they hold dear.
Yes, I would agree with that. Yeah, and very strong words, but I think I think it's very true. Yep.
And then we'll go on to looking at particular Greek textbooks. These will be for Attic Greek, and here's just a short sample of what's coming in the list. Groton and Finn, From Alpha to Omega by Anne Groton.
Yes.
The Hansen and Quinn textbook, Donald Mastronarde's Greek Introduction, Athanadze, and then a recent entry in the ranks, Greek for Reading by Russell and Keller.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Or Keller and Russell, I don't remember.
Right. And I was thinking about this topic this morning, and I knew that you had selected some texts, and I hadn't looked at the list. But the ones you just read, if I had to kind of rattle off a top 5 or 6, or a top 10, all of those would be in that list.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
These are the standard textbooks.
Yep.
So, Jeff, what's your own experience? How did you get into the study of Greek? What are your first memories of learning Greek and so forth?
Sure. So I went into, I started my undergraduate career with the idea that I was going to major in history, but without any real kind of idea of what that would lead to in terms of career. I knew I loved history, and I had to finish up my language requirement, and so I had taken a couple of years of Latin in high school.
Yep.
And so I forget what the college requirements are. I think I had 1 or 2 more years of Latin. And so I took that, and I was pretty good at it.
Okay.
And
the Latin, you were loving it.
Yeah, I was loving the Latin. I was loving the history. And through the study of the further study of Latin, it really made me gravitate towards ancient history, particularly ancient Greco-Roman history. And it was through the encouragement of our former colleague and mentor, Ken Bratt, who's been on this show
once again,
more than once.
Wow, he really haunts the hallways of Ad Nauseam, doesn't he?
He does, and he took me aside and he said, "Hey, listen, why not consider a language, at least a languages minor, if not a major, and which would require the taking of Greek."
So what did he see in you, I guess, is really the question.
I think he recognized my interest. He recognized that I had some talent with the languages. I asked a lot of questions, and so he said, let's see where this goes. I mean, I was not planning of taking any more languages beyond finishing my Latin requirement, and so I think I started Greek my sophomore year.
Okay, so this would have been maybe 91.
91, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And and I dove in with the Groton and Finn text, which I'm looking at the table here. We both have our original text from that course, and I never looked back.
Okay.
Yeah. How about you?
Well, let's draw out this Aradnian thread a little bit longer until we get to the Minotaur at the center. So you did how much Greek as an undergrad?
A lot.
Okay. So you did the 2 intro semesters.
2 intro semesters.
What else do you remember?
I remember I took there was a Plato seminar.
Okay.
I did some Homer.
Was Plato by George Harris?
I did Plato with George Harris. I did Homer. I did Sophocles.
Okay.
It's all kind of.
Did you read Oedipus Rex in the Sophocles course?
We did.
Okay, maybe with Mark Williams. I don't remember.
I think that's correct.
Okay,
right. I remember that even talking to Ken Bratt saying that, well, if you're going to do this classical languages, even starting in your sophomore years, you're already a bit behind because there's so much to do.
Well, thanks a lot, Ken.
And so so I remember I had to, particularly in my senior year, cramming in a number of Greek courses. A couple of them had to be independent studies because there was no room for it.
You know who else did that?
Who did that?
Was Ken Bratt.
Oh, is that right?
Yes, he decided basically his junior year to be a classics major, and then as it turns out, I did the same thing.
Oh yeah. So you know what?
Very similar.
Cramming it in is
absolutely.
Yes, exactly.
Intense.
Yes.
Intense. It reminds me of Heinrich Schliemann. Remember when we did an episode on him or 2, and the way that he learned languages, right? As he's traveling around Europe. This is in what is the name of that book? The Lost Treasures of Troy? I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
And he, as he goes from country to country, he switches the language in which he's writing his journal.
Right.
But when he wanted to learn Dutch or French, for 6 weeks, he studied only one of those languages. and he made sure there was not a word spoken or read in anything except the language which was his target.
Yes.
And I think that although you and I didn't do that, it approximates the idea, right? The intensity.
Yes.
And I really think that's the key to mastery.
Absolutely. And some kind of full immersion experience.
Exactly.
Right? Now, I'm sure we'll get into this at some point.
Right.
If this, not this episode in another part, is, as I'm sure if our listeners have been listening, we know that Dr. Noe has gravitated towards spoken Latin.
That's right.
And you've done things with spoken ancient Greek.
I have
before.
a little bit. Yep.
And so I'll be very curious to kind of hear how that method connects with your opinion of these textbooks.
Yes.
All of which, the ones you mentioned, as far as I'm aware, have no spoken element built into them at all.
Yes, my understanding is Athanadze tries a little bit to do.
Oh, it does. Okay,
I've
not worked expression.
with that one. Yeah. I haven't taught from it either. I have just perused it. But yes, I'd be happy to talk about that.
Yeah.
And I'll say just right off the bat that my spoken Greek ability, Attic Greek, is far inferior to my ability to speak Latin. But I'm blessed to know some of the very best practitioners in the world of this particular skill and have learned a lot from them.
Yes, I know you've I believe you went to a seminar in Greece.
That's right. Living Greek in Greece.
That's right.
The year was 2011. And it was in Selionitika on the Peloponnese.
Yeah.
And for 2 weeks, we spoke Greek,
Man.
and I gained a lot. With one, Alex Petkus, who is now famous for his own podcast. I think it's called The Cost of Glory. And I guess, I rarely plug someone else's podcast. I think I'm going to regret it, in fact. But Alex is the real deal. He's a fantastic scholar. And I'm not sure what the podcast is doing. I think he's mostly discussing ancient Greek stories from Plutarch and so forth.
Yeah.
But Alex is a phenomenal speaker of ancient Greek and descended from modern Greeks, you might say.
Right. Is he a Greek American or is he a native?
He's a Greek American.
Greek American.
So PhD from Princeton.
Yeah.
Did not go into academia. Went into a much sounder and more lucrative line of work.
Yeah.
But then has kept his interests in the classics and even garnered a large audience by talking about Plutarch and ancient heroism.
Reminds me of José, like someone who went into something much more practical.
Oh, for sure.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So then did you get the chance to teach any Greek in grad school?
Yes, I taught.
Okay.
I taught an intro Greek. The only time I taught Greek in grad school was it was a summer intensive, and it was like 7 weeks of intro Greek. And just fly through it.
Yeah.
I was offered. They let me teach a ton of Latin.
Okay.
But that
Greek was hands off, huh?
Yeah, it was. What was your experience at Iowa?
I didn't get to teach any Greek at Iowa except extracurricularly.
Okay.
Which is I had a number of tutees.
Yeah.
Someone would come around the department and say, I need to learn Greek for my PhD in religion or my PhD in philosophy. I'm a homeschool kid. I want to learn some Greek. And I always snatched them up right away because I really wanted to keep my Greek skill fresh if I was able.
Right, and it was cash under the table.
Absolutely. Right? It buys a lot of yams,
A lot of yams, right.
So I did as much of that as I could, but no, I wasn't tasked with teaching Greek, which, I was disappointed about, but, that's how it goes.
Yeah.
So.
Did you teach Latin?
Oh, tons of it.
Yeah.
Tons of it.
That's interesting how that... Well, I mean, there was at Northwestern, there was a much greater demand for Latin than there was for Greek.
I think that's the way it tends to be.
Right. All right, Dave. So I've told a little bit my story. How about you? How did you come to Greek?
Right. So it was 1992, I believe. As an undergrad at that institution we both used to frequent.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, maybe I'll go to seminary.
Yeah.
Because that's long been an interest, not exactly an ambition. And I knew I needed Greek, so I signed up for a Greek course.
Now, did this thought hit you as you were out hacky sacking on the common lawn?
I think I
with
hacked
your long hair flowing behind you.
I think I hacked some sack, you might say, and I did have a mullet, as it turns out. Business in the front, party in the back.
That's right,
as they say. I don't know how it came to me, but I got thrown into the intro Greek class, and I've probably told this story many times. My professor was one Richard Weaver's. I remember. Fantastic professor.
He was great. Yep.
And he used to explain to us the Greek particle ge, right? Mm-hmm. Gamma epsilon ge. And I'll never forget. He said, ge is, here he's cribbing from Deniston's famous work, the Greek particle, is inferential and limitative, right? So it intends to give you some idea of the logic of what was just said, and it also restricts the scope of the idea somehow. So it's like shining a little tiny spotlight on some idea. That's "ge."
Yeah.
But the way he said we ought to translate it is like "just," the way people use "just." Right? So if you and I are on our way to Mission Impossible and I say something like, "Hey, Jeff, could you just buy all the concessions? Could you just buy all the snacks?" And you say, "Sure," and committing yourself to, $250 worth of
Sour Patch Kids
and Juji fruits, right?
Yeah.
That's "ga." But the thing he used to illustrate it is he would say, he had so many pet peeves, and I realized if I'm going to be a successful professor, I have to learn how to hate certain things.
Right.
And then
something tells you had to jump on that.
maybe, and then find a way to put them into everyday conversation.
Yeah.
So for him, it was when people use the word "just" in prayers.
Yes.
You remember this?
Yes.
He said it's like, "Ga, oh Lord, can you just bring about world peace?"
Right.
He said, "That's "ga." Lord, could you just forgive all our sins? No big deal. He said, "That's "ga."
Right.
And he had all these little things. It was an enchanting world of philology that I'd never encountered something like that before.
I mean, and that's right on, because when you do use "just" in that way,
That's right.
It kind of slows things down. It points to something.
That's right.
But it also limits.
That's right.
And so it kind of takes the air out of the balloon
Right.
of its importance.
Right.
Yeah.
So back in the days when I used to get haircuts, when I had a need for such, you go to the barber and you sit down and they say, "What would you like?" And you say, "What?"
Just take a little off.
Just take a little off the top. Exactly. You know that many bald people still retain their combs. Did you know this?
No.
Do you know why?
No.
They just can't part with it.
Oh man. All right, let's quickly move on.
Okay. So then
tell your story.
Richard Weavers,
Yes.
right, made me fall in love with Greek, even though the textbook we were using is the incredibly difficult Groton and Finn.
Yes.
And so for the first semester, I was a strong A- student. I could not for the life of me score beyond an A-. Mm-hmm. Then in the second semester, something clicked, something changed. And the very first time I got an A, my grandmother sent me $5 in the mail. It's a true story.
But because you got the A, or that was a happy coincidence?
No.
The $5 showed up.
No. It's because I got an A.
So did you called grandma?
I probably had been complaining to my mom or something, and she passed it on to grandma.
I see.
And this dear, sweet, incredibly generous woman sent me $5 and a letter of laudation. You have to remember, in 1992, $5 could purchase you a trip to the moon.
Exactly.
And you could stop off at Ruth's Chris on the way back and have a steak.
And still have a couple bucks left over.
That's right. That was a lot of money. And we would hang onions from our belts at the times. In any event, so that little bit of success really motivated me. And I've told this story before, too. Then it was Ken Bratt who called me into his office and said, "We'd like you to be the Greek tutor." And I said, "Well, Ken, I'm not the best Greek student." And very quickly he said, "Yeah, we know that." So you don't have to say it so quickly.
Yeah.
He said, "But you have other skills that we think would be conducive to helping the other students with Greek." So he, with you, he saw some glimmer of hope,
Yes.
On the, in the desert sands of Tatooine, and signed me up as the Greek tutor.
Yeah.
And then it immediately went to my head, of course.
Oh, you started throwing your weight around?
Absolutely. Particle this, particle that.
Get a little bit of power.
And it went right to my head.
Yeah.
So then I remember when Rich Weavers called me into the Greek class in my next year to introduce myself to the students as their tutor, right? And immediately I said, "Greek is very easy. Some people will tell you it's hard, but they're not teaching it properly," which ironically has been the theme of my entire career.
Really?
Yes, but Rich then had to reel me back in and say, "Now, wait a minute.
Whoa.
This guy's drunk on his tutorial power. It's still quite difficult, but he's going to help you." So.
Yeah. Man.
So then studied a lot of Greek, just like you did. I read Herodotus with Ken. I read some Plato with John Hare. Read a lot of Greek, so that when I got to grad school, my Greek skill was stronger than my Latin skill.
Is that right?
And that was helpful.
Yeah.
So
one of my, as you're taking us back down memory lane,
right.
I remember those intro Greek courses as being dominated by seminary students.
Oh yes,
right. Which
yes.
It's no longer the case, but it was required for seminary students
Absolutely.
to get your grounding in Attic Greek.
That's right. That's why there were 30 to 40 students in those intro classes. I was mostly, as a tutor, trying to help these pre-sems get through their Greek.
Yeah.
Then I never went to seminary, and now I'm a pastor, as it turns out, strangely. But this is going to be one of the themes, right, of this episode and the next, and that is the relationship between Attic and Koine.
Yeah.
Our dear listeners have been, I would say, quite indulgent and patient as we're developing this, what did you call it, a walk down memory lane? Mm-hmm. So let's now get on to the meat of it.
All right, let's dig into this this concept of Attic versus Koine Greek, or Attic before Koine Greek,
right?
And see where the things fall out.
All right.
Yep.
So we've got different dialects, right? The Greek language as it originated, I don't know exactly when, but it's the descendant of Mycenaean in some ways. Mm-hmm. We've got 750 or so. All of the sudden, the Homeric poems, the Barry Powell book, right, Homer and the Invention of the Greek Language. And suddenly now we've got Greek being not just spoken, which it had been for a long time, but turned into a written language as well.
Yes.
So now we come down to the 5th century. By far the most dominant dialect is the Attic dialect.
Right.
But you probably remember the phenomenon of finding unusual forms in some of the tragedians, in Pindar and other places.
Yeah.
And you flip through the book and it says, oh, this is Aeolian, or this is Boeotian, or this is some kind of Doric form.
Right.
So what we're looking at there, or Ionic, we're looking at different dialects of the Greek language. A very common one was the Ionian dialect, which you can find in Herodotus, of course, and his histories. So fast forward then to 4th century and the career of Alexander. So 336 till his death in 323. He's got that 13-year reign of glory or terror, right? And he takes the Greek language with him east all the way to the Indus River.
Yes.
When he retreats, people in all those towns that he established, the 27 plus Alexandrias, they continue to speak Greek, but it goes through a kind of transformation. It's Attic Greek, but it has been tremendously simplified.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so I think an issue for we were just talking about seminarians, right? When you approach a language that you need for your career or for your study, I think my sense is it's the case in like lots of seminarians is that they no longer learn Attic,
right?
They go right to the Koine,
right?
Because I mean, in some ways, for obvious reasons, this is the dialect that the New Testament was written in.
Yes, I would say pragmatic reasons.
Yes,
and here comes my nasty kind of argument. Okay, it's not going to be what's the opposite of warm fuzzies?
Cold pricklies.
Cold pricklies, yeah. Right? So in the 20th century, maybe middle to late 20th century. This is my assessment of it. Now, if there are others out there listening who know more and they want to push back or, call me unkind or something like that, bring it on.
All right.
Let's have it.
Okay.
And so in the 20th century, mid to late 20th century, the study of the Greek language in seminaries moved away from the way that you and I were taught, which was you learn Attic first, then you learn New Testament, and it moved to studying only New Testament.
Yes.
And so those who study only New Testament Greek, here's my claim, are doing something deeply untraditional and at the same time contrary to their own interests.
Yes.
In fact, to 2,000 years of tradition, because every leading theologian and thinker until the 20th century who claimed expertise in the language of the New Testament, or better yet, was recognized by their peers as an expert in New Testament, every one of them knew the languages and cultures surrounding the New Testament authors deeply and extensively.
Yes.
So that was the starting point.
Yeah. And I would add to that, it just given, we did some recent episodes on the possible influence of,
correct,
of ancient Greek culture and literature on the New Testament, right? So even talking practical approaches to the New Testament, having a grounding in the world that knowing Attic Greek can lead you to, would therefore give you a better understanding of the New Testament writ large. It's not just about the nuts and bolts of that particular dialect.
Yes, and I can even put it more strongly than that. I think everything you said is exactly right, but I would even try to up the ante a little bit.
Okay.
And that is to say that without an understanding of the cultures in which the New Testament was written, the misunderstanding of the New Testament will be inevitable.
Yeah.
So while I wouldn't say that every Christian has to read the classics in order for there to be a proper preaching of the New Testament, I would say that if no one in the Christian community, specifically her experts, knows the classics, then everyone will be impoverished in their understanding of the New Testament.
Indeed.
Because it was written in a certain time and place.
Right. Yeah,
So-
look, I'll just add a couple of things. They're not necessarily connected, but I think they largely apply to what we're talking about here. I remember this coming up in that intro year, and seminarians talking about not complaining that they have to learn Attic, but kind of exploring, why this first?
Well, there may have been a little bit of complaining.
There might have been.
I remember, why do I just want to read the Gospel of Mark.
Right.
Why are you making me read Aesop or Plato? This is absurd.
Yes, and I remember one of my professors, may have even been Rich Weaver's.
Yeah.
He put it in kind of practical terms. He says, well, if you want to just strip it down to basics, he says, learning Attic, it's like the batter in the Ondeck circle, and you're swinging the bat with the donut on it.
Right.
And so you swing the heavy bat, and by the time you get up to the plate to learn Koine, everything is so much easier.
That's
so
right.
I think there's a part to that as well. And then another thing I would add too is, and this is just purely anecdotal from people that I've talked to, is that I think there's also kind of business financial choices that are being made here. Is that seminaries are competing for a shrinking pool of students.
For sure.
And so if you're advertising, hey, you've got to take all of these languages. The idea is, well, they're not going to come here.
Right.
So you dumb it down to draw in people to kind of win customers. I think that's also a part of it.
For sure.
Yeah.
And a kind of pragmatism or a practicality has a lot of reason for existence in certain other areas, right? Mm-hmm. But in this particular area, I think it's extremely dangerous.
Yeah.
So if you want to be pragmatic about where you buy your shoes, who's cooking your donuts, I called a plumber yesterday to take care of some plumbing issues. Pragmatism in those areas, fine, right? But when it comes to this particular area of preparation to handle the scriptures properly, that seems like a place where pragmatism is extremely dangerous.
I agree, right? And I think what adds to the danger of it as well is we also live in this hyper technological age,
right?
Where you can find the New Testament with hypertext.
Correct.
And so, why do I have to learn this language? I can just click on the word and it will break it down for me.
Yeah.
Right. And it'll tell me all of the nuances here.
Yep.
And to look at that as a substitute for a deep understanding of the language and the culture that it comes from is that's dangerous.
So to curmudgeon on, here's the nub of my critique, and that is what was a strength, right, has been turned into a liability. So the strength was for men like Basil of Caesarea, for men like John Chrysostom, for the reformers. What was a strength was study Demosthenes and Homer, study Plato and Aristotle and Aristophanes. That was a strength. Now that's been turned into almost a liability.
Yeah.
Don't waste your time on them.
Right.
And what was considered an unfortunate and sad deficiency, which is along the lines of, yes, I'd like to learn those things, but I really can't, has in some places been turned into a virtue. So it's almost better not to know those things and to just study the New Testament.
Yes.
So I'm just discouraged that there's this unfortunate antagonism between those who advocate the study of Attic and Koine and those who advocate the study of Koine only.
Exactly. Right. And I think even moving past that of those who advocate studying neither.
Yeah, well, that's true. Maybe that's the bigger problem.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the bigger problem. So to illustrate this, I want to point out just one example, and then we're going to have to get to the ads here. In 1930, there was a man named J. Gresham Machen, a hero of mine. He wrote something called The Virgin Birth of Christ. And Machen was a student of Basil Gildersleeve, the great author of the grammar at Johns Hopkins. And Machen wrote this to demonstrate that the concept of the virgin birth of Christ does not come from the pagan authors. So if you look through, the stories of Zeus and Danae and so forth, you look through the different stories of miraculous births in Greco-Roman antiquity, a kind of syncretistic or shallow reading of those stories might lead you to think, well, that's where Luke got the idea.
Right.
That's where Matthew got the idea.
Right.
And so in chapter 14 of Machen's The Virgin Birth of Christ, the title it's the second to last chapter, The Theory of Pagan Derivation. And so Machen goes through all of the stories in Greco-Roman antiquity of miraculous birth, and he shows that it's impossible for Luke to have gotten his idea of the virgin birth from one of these pagan sources. Now, could someone do what Machen did? Could a scholar do that if they weren't really well versed in the classical world? And the answer is clearly no.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's a strong argument, I would say, for studying the classics in addition to studying the New Testament.
Yeah.
So not just Koine, but Attic also.
Yes. Speaking of theories of pagan derivation,
yes,
it's time for the ads. This episode of Ad Nauseam is brought to you by Hackett Publishing. Dave, we often use the phrase in this podcast of keeping the flame alive.
That's right.
Things that we're trying to do with this humble little podcast. But these guys at Hackett have been doing exactly that for nigh unto 54 years.
Incredible.
They've got their offices in Indianapolis and in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And I love their selection. I love the affordability. I love the artwork. I love the quality of the translations,
right.
the quality of the scholarship. These guys have threaded a very difficult needle.
That's right.
And continue to do so. And they believed in us from the beginning. And they have thrown their weight behind this little podcast. And I can't thank them enough.
Yes.
But they offer
well said.
They offer wonderful things for our listeners. So if you have a library at home, and I'm guessing if you're listening to this, you probably do, and you want to grow that library,
right? And
you want to fill it with affordable, attractive, and erudite books, do yourself a favor. Go to hackettpublishing.com. That's HACKETT publishing.com. Check out their vast catalog. Find the books that you want. Drop them into the little satchel. And then what should they do from there, Dave?
They should enter the coupon code, which is AN as in ad nauseam, and then the current year 2025. Mm-hmm. As I sit in my little garden library in my sunroom and my eyes scan the bookshelves, I see many Hackett titles. Aquinas, Descartes, Plato, Aristotle, some fantastic stuff, and some new Aristotle books coming right down the pipe. Mm-hmm. Check those out, and then put your coupon code in there, AN2025, and that will get you 20% off your entire order and
free shipping.
Check it out. This episode of Ad Nauseam is also brought to you by the good folks at Ratio Coffee. Our friend Mark Helweg, an entrepreneur, is out there in Portland, Oregon, and I think he's in Austin, Texas now too.
Oh wow.
Guy's everywhere.
He is.
And they're coming out with a brand new, maybe you saw it, a brand new Ratio 8, redesign.
You sent me that link. It makes
limited edition.
I was envious.
Yeah.
It looks so sleek. I want to get this one and put it next to my current
Collect them all.
Collect them all.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you have some coffee this morning, Jeff?
I did. I had my Ratio 8 fired up and ready to go.
Right.
I came downstairs at about 5:30 this morning.
That is so early.
I love it.
Were you blue booking?
No, it was. This is my regular schedule. I love that golden hour,
right,
when everybody else is asleep.
Yeah,
I come down, I hit the button, and it goes through those 3 stages. You got the bloom stage.
That's right.
You have the brew stage. And then the last stage isn't really a stage. It's done. It's
done.
really just 2 stages.
That's correct.
Yeah.
I like the Alan Bloom stage, though. The closing of the American coffee.
Right, exactly.
I really like that one.
Right.
Yeah. So the time that you wake up, here's a nugget of trivia for our dear listeners, is called in Latin the Gallenicium.
The Gallenicium.
Yeah, it's the time that the rooster crows.
Ah, yes.
You got any roosters in the branches around your house?
We don't, but we do have some neighbors not so far away who have chickens.
Oh, you're kidding me.
And in quiet moments, I can hear them clucking and scratching around. Yeah.
The neighbors or the chickens?
Yeah, both.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Ratio Coffee lovers, go to ratiocoffee.com/adnauseum. Mm-hmm. We have our own extension here as an affiliate. Check out the different machines. The 4 is fantastic. It's sleek. It's takes up less countertop real estate. It's more attainable in terms of price point and still delivers delicious coffee. Maybe check that one out. And then the coupon code is ANRATIO, ANRATIO 2025, and you will receive $20 off your machine at checkout.
Check it out. And hey, listeners, are you ready for some art that truly speaks to your story? Well, meet Della, a Tucson-based oil painter who captures the people, places, and moments you cherish with breathtaking detail. She's showcased her work in multiple galleries, illustrated books, and is often commissioned for standout projects. If you are interested in getting some of her works, she has it currently for sale at her website, Della Chelpa Art.
You better spell that.
Yes, DELLACHELPKA.ART.
That's correct. You can check the gallery there of some of her beautiful oil paintings. She does a lot of other things too, Jeff. I don't think these are being offered, but she carves avocado pits.
Oh, so she works in all kinds of
multi-talented, yes, and does many other fascinating things. But the the oil paintings are incredible.
They are amazing.
Highly realistic,
Yeah.
almost photographic.
Yeah.
And check out what she has for sale. And then if you enter this coupon code, Apelles, Apelles. Jeff, who is Apelles?
He was probably the most famous artist, painter from antiquity.
That's correct. You will receive 10% off on anything that you order.
Yeah, and even if you don't want to buy something and you're an art appreciator, go to her website and just scan through her work. It's jaw-dropping.
It's incredible.
Check it out.
Okay, Jeff, as we get back into it, we're ready for our first textbook.
Yes.
And that is the one by Groton and Finn. This is Frank J. Groton and James K. Finn, The Hill School, Pottstown, Pennsylvania, 1983.
Yes.
So what do you think?
Well, do you have any idea if this book is still in print?
I don't think so.
No, I would imagine not. I mean, the first thing is, I pulled this thing off my shelf today.
Yes.
Probably for the first time since I was a senior in college. But
back in the roaring 20s.
It's followed me around. I've taken it with me. But the
Right.
first thing as I opened it up, it says, are you sure this was written by Groton Finn? Finn, I thought it might be the Unabomber. Because it is right off a typewriter.
Yeah, it is.
Old school typewriter.
Yes. But it must have some redeeming qualities, right? It's got 60 separate lessons, more than 200 pages. It's got 22 illustrations. I think someone could likely find this as a PDF somewhere. And like virtually every textbook, lesson 1 is alphabet and pronunciation.
Right. I mean, you mentioned the 60 lessons. That also struck me as a rather kind of large number. So I'm trying to remember we use this over 2 semesters.
2 semesters.
Right?
Yep.
And as someone who is who has to order textbooks every semester and looking at new offerings for different courses, what I'm noticing more and more is that a lot of textbooks are now so many of them have 15 chapters,
right?
Because they are geared towards a 14 or 15 week semester.
I didn't know that.
Right, and so they're saying the kind of idea is you'll do a chapter a week.
I see.
Idea. And so it struck me as like 60 lessons. Okay, that's 30 lessons
per semester.
That's
probably 2 chapters a week.
2 chapters a week. Yeah.
Some of them are pretty small, though. I mean, lesson 1 of this particular textbook doesn't have a lot in it. So drill A on page 3. Write the small Greek letter for each of the following names. And then it's just a garble of names of the alphabet: mu, beta, omicron, zeta, chi, alpha, sigma, eta, upsilon, gamma, omega, kappa, phi, etc. Mm-hmm. Do you remember doing that exercise? I
remember. I think the first lesson that was given to me by Rich Weavers was, here's the alphabet, memorize it.
See you tomorrow.
And be able to reproduce it in both capital and lowercase letters. And that was it. I mean, I recognize, at a glance, the value of having these that are kind of out of order.
Right.
So you're not memorizing the order.
Just the order.
You have to kind of call it up.
Right.
Exactly what it is.
Right. And in my many years of teaching Greek, I have found that some students can get to the 3rd, 4th, 5th semester and not know the alphabet.
Yeah.
Which is sad.
Yeah.
So I always have them say alpha through omega, and then usually I have them turn it around and go the other way.
Do backwards, yeah.
Omega, psi, chi, phi, right?
Yeah.
And so on. Can they go from omega all the way back to alpha?
Yeah.
So then we have drill B on page 3. Pronounce the following Greek words. Stress the accented syllables. You have athletes, angelos, technikos, pneumonia, ankurra, and so forth. Mm-hmm. And then go the other way from English to Greek.
So a little bit of spoken Greek.
Yep.
Right. I mean, you're not crafting ideas or anything.
No.
But I mean, my memory of this text is there was very little that was spoken. Even even asking students to kind of read things
out loud.
Yeah, didn't happen a whole lot.
No, because it creates panic. And as much as I love and admire and cherish the memories of my undergrad professors, who were excellent, by the way.
Indeed.
Prepped me very well for grad school.
Yep.
I wish that they had done more speaking and, demanded more of me as a student. But that's spoken like someone who has now become a professor. So
Yep.
So on page 5, we have the very first vocabulary list, and you'll notice that it's all verbs. And there's a total of, this is page 5, there's a total of 8 verbs. Mm-hmm. Standard list of Greek verbs. A little bit later, maybe in this episode or the next, we'll get to the 151 common Attic verbs and give the listener some advice for how to start building a vocabulary.
Yeah.
But we've got ago, blapto, grapho, diaphtero, athelo, klepto, paidevo, and speudo. to hasten or to hurry.
Yes, I imagine all of those words are in that list.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yep. So now let's skip way ahead in the book because we don't have time to spend only on Groton and Finn. And let's skip to, page number 102. And this is lesson number 30, and it is a review. So notice the reading here, Jeff, is adapted from Herodotus.
Yes.
It's Histories, Book 4. And I believe that, like most introductory Greek textbooks, you have the text, albeit in Unabomber typist form.
Yes.
And then beneath, you have, I think there are 10 separate notes, which are supposed to be a kind of crib or a gloss.
Yes.
Which is to help out the student with the more unusual, difficult forms.
Yeah. What do you think about of that? I mean, it reminds me a lot of like the Far edition of the Aeneid. Right. You have, the text on top and the full bottom half is with notes and vocabulary help. And
I don't think that there's anything wrong with it per se. And after many years of debating different people and using different textbooks, both Greek and Latin, I'm past the stage of thinking there's a silver bullet.
Yeah.
That you have to use this one. This is the best method. This is the best pedagogy. I think people often use that as an excuse for just not studying the language at all.
Right.
And they'll often ask me, what is the best Latin textbook or what is the best Greek textbook? My standard answer is any of them that don't contain inaccuracies will be fine.
Yeah.
Just sit down and do the work.
Right.
Having said that, some methods are better than others. And so what I don't particularly like about the gloss method is that it can reinforce for students the wrong idea, specifically when the glosses are derivatives, right? So sometimes the derivatives are teaching you this Greek word is best represented by this particular English word, which is its derivative.
Yes.
And that's just often not the case.
Right. Yeah. Going back once again to Rich Weaver's, one of my favorite quotes from him is that language is not math.
Right.
Right. So they think of this idea of this word equals this word.
Right.
Equus equals horse.
Right.
In this very direct way is I think ultimately is a roadblock from really kind of appreciating kind of the full resonance of the language.
Yep. And the before we go on to the next textbook, the criticism that I would make of this textbook is the one that I will make of many of them, is that each chapter just contains too little Greek. There's just not enough information.
Right.
When we get around to discussing New Testament Greek textbooks, my main target will be the famous one by Mounce, which I think is subject to the same criticism. There's just not enough Greek in each chapter.
Yeah.
Too much explanation, insufficient practice.
Right.
Most of these chapters in Groton and Finn, they have a drill in which you translate 5 sentences from Greek to English. Then you translate 5 sentences from English to Greek, and then maybe a little chapter. Then it's on to the next lesson, the next difficult concept.
Right. Yeah. And I think using a Latin textbook by comparison is a bit unfair, just because with Greek you have the hurdle of the new alphabet to get over.
Sure.
Right, before getting these. But like the text you use in your own program for the Lingua Latina per se Illustrata,
right,
you are reading Latin from day one.
Lots of it.
And so I think too, one of my critiques of the Groton and Finn too is it takes too long to start having students reading some extended Greek,
right,
and you're left kind of just bits and pieces of what's happening to the horse.
That's right.
Right, chapter after chapter.
Yep.
So I mean, by the time we get to lesson 30, where we have this fairly extended, adapted passage of Herodotus, great.
Right.
But maybe it's taken, that would be at the end of semester 1.
Right.
It takes you that long to get to something like that.
Yes. And so if you're going to give them something difficult at the beginning or a little more advanced like Aesop, Aesop's not difficult compared to other authors, but it's hard when you have no vocabulary.
Right.
I think it's entirely appropriate as a teacher to just give them the meaning of words so they have some sense of building speed and confidence.
Yes.
If you have to supply them 80% of the words, it's all how you approach it.
Right.
You say, this means crow. This is the Greek word for grape or rooster.
Yeah.
If we're talking about Aesop or lamb, just keep going. You'll be fine.
Right.
Because the main barrier to overcome in the early stages is the students' lack of confidence and their terror of the experience.
Exactly.
So shall we go on next to the very famous book by Anne Groton?
Let's do it.
And that is From Alpha to Omega, a beginning course in classical Greek, published by our sponsors, Hackett, and now in its 5th edition. Now, Jeff, you have taught from this particular book, have you not?
Yes. When I first started to teach Greek, this was the text I used for many, many semesters.
Yes, at Calvin, right?
At Calvin, yep.
So eventually our predecessors jettisoned Groten and Finn.
Yes.
And moved on to Groton and Groton from Alpha to Omega.
Yes, exactly. I have this book. I have a soft spot in my heart because it was. I began teaching with this book. I became very familiar with it.
And you know Anne Groton.
I know, and she's a lovely, sweet woman.
That's right, from St. Olave's College.
Yes, exactly. Just as I was kind of looking through this book, which I haven't looked at again in years and years and years, it also struck me is that by and large, the setup and the layout isn't all that different from it looks a lot better.
Oh, sure.
A ton better.
It's a modern text, you might say.
I mean, this has 50 separate lessons.
That's right.
And so 25 per semester.
Yep.
But it is a kind of, it's almost like, well, this is how you do it.
That's how you do it.
You do vocabulary. You have some short sentences. You go from English to Greek, Greek to English. Maybe a snippet of kind of cultural stuff to kind of keep it interesting. And then the next chapter is basically the same.
Exactly. So looking at the table of contents, Lesson 1, Introduction, Greek alphabet. Lesson 2, Greek accents. Lesson 3, Omega verbs, present, active, indicative. O-S-A, omeneta usi, right? Mm-hmm. Lesson 4, first declension feminine nouns like he, hora. Lesson 5, first declension feminine nouns, part 2. I also taught from this book for many years. Mm-hmm. In fact, so many years that I had a good portion of the example sentences memorized.
Yeah.
Because that's just how it goes.
Right.
It's a well-designed, well-organized, beautifully presented textbook.
Yeah.
Many years ago, when this was owned by Focus, remember Focus Publishing,
I do.
Which Hackett purchased. Focus wanted an audio version of this made, and I actually was the one who recorded the Greek to English and the English to Greek.
Oh, is that right?
Sentences for all the chapters.
Yeah.
This was in something like 2005. So let's just read the opening paragraph from Lesson 1. Greek belongs to a large and colorful family of Indo-European languages, all thought to be descended from a very old, now extinct language spoken by people who roamed over the Eurasian continent during prehistoric times. Other prominent members of the family are the Italic, including Latin and the Romance languages, Germanic, including English, Celtic, Baltic, Slavic, including Russian, Armenian, Iranian, and Indic languages.
Yeah, I have to say, comparing this to Groton to Finn, one of the things I really appreciate about Anne Groton's text is her fleshing out of a lot of these cultural details.
That's right.
And she's very skilled at taking complex things, boiling it down, writing it in an approachable, interesting kind of way. And it makes it a much more kind of richer experience learning the language than the bare bones Unabomber.
Absolutely.
Groton and Finn. Yeah.
And each chapter begins with an actual quote from an author. So
Indeed.
Here we have a little tag from Pythagoras, as quoted by the Neoplatonist Iamblichus. Arche de toi hemesu pantos, which is...
well begun is half done.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's some Greek at the very beginning before we launch into the grammatical explanations.
And it's a little encouragement too.
It is.
Yeah, just get your legs churning and everything will be just fine.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's a well designed. We get our first chart on page 3. We get the explanation of the diphthongs on page 4. If someone said to me, Professor Noe, your Moss approach that you talk about so much, that doesn't really square with my interest. I want an old-fashioned grammatical approach in the sense of, don't make me read too much and learn things kind of in a bit at a time way. Give me something where everything's laid out and diagrammed.
Yeah.
This or Hansen and Quinn is the book I would recommend.
Indeed. Yeah, it's really good. It's very logical.
It is.
Yeah, it's very practical.
Beautifully structured.
In the way that it's structured, right.
So what's the first reading, Jeff, on page 7, the very first Greek reading that we are given?
Yes, we're given an 8-line passage, which is the title, Zeus Cuts the Camel Down to Size.
Nice.
Right. So already, so this is lesson 1.
Right.
This is a fairly long passage.
Right.
With clearly all kinds of vocabulary that the intro student would have no idea what it is.
That's right.
And below it is a full English translation.
A full English translation.
I like this a lot.
I do too.
Yeah, so you're getting them. You're getting the student to read the text.
Learning to hear the Greek.
Exactly. I don't remember doing this lesson, but I imagine I had. So forget about what the words mean. Let's just hear it.
Yes.
And so you get students kind of reading Greek, getting used to the rhythm, you getting used to the sound, without really having to worry about the translation. I think this is a great approach.
Not to worry too much about getting all of our endings correct.
Yes.
Because Greek, like Latin, inflected language, the morphology, as everybody knows, the ending of the word indicates the word's function in the sentence.
Yes.
So this is adapted from Aesop, fable number 119, kamelos theasemene tardron epitois kerdrasin agalomenon, etc. And then we get Anne Groton's very serviceable translation. Camel, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, observing a bull glorying in his horns, became envious of him and wanted to get an equally fine set of horns for herself.
Right.
And so on. And this is, this passage is immediately preceded by a list of 24 words or names from Greek history and mythology, just to get the student used to the alphabet, accents, pronunciation. I think this is a great combination and a good way of kind of immersing the student in the Greek without the pressure of having to know what everything means.
That's correct. Now let's skip ahead and let's go to page 173, 172. So now we're deep into it, and this is lesson 26, direct and indirect questions and alternative questions. Now, this is a little more complicated, and this is something students would find pretty difficult, page 171, actually. So this is direct and indirect questions, alternative questions. O talas ago, are a me mantis? O wretched me, am I a soothsayer? So here's a quote to begin the chapter from Sophocles and Antigone. And can you read what Groton says to the student in section 163?
Yes, from the very beginning.
Yes.
Yeah. So you already know the simplest way of forming a direct question in Greek by placing a question mark, which looks like a semicolon to us, at the end of a sentence that would otherwise be a declarative statement. No change in word order is required.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and then she says, compare the following sentences. Eke sippon, you have a horse. Eke sippon, do you have a horse? There's the declarative and the direct question. There is indication that the ancient Greeks would have used a change in tone to indicate a question, the whole language being tonal. But now she introduces us to a long list of interrogative adverbs. This is a little more complicated. Pothen, poi, potapupos, from where to where, when, where, how. And then we have as well the interrogative adjective becomes indefinite through the change of the accent. Pothen, the enclitic poi, pote, pu, pos, also enclitics.
I remember my students hating this.
Oh, yeah. It's complicated.
It's very complicated.
It's complicated. Now, there's different ways that you can approach this. Groton approaches it by laying it all out in a very clear, logical, appropriately repetitive format. The book that I mostly teach out of Moss simply requires the student to recognize the word, poi, pothen, whatever it may be, pos, pu, and to learn from context, this is not a statement, it's a question.
Yeah.
And then give them a lot of practice.
Right.
Lots of practice. So as we continue to scroll through the chapter, to turn, you might say, through the chapter, you finally get to page 177. This is exercise 168. Now we have 10 Greek to English sentences. And maybe we should just read through a couple and, give a little simple translation so that the listener can get a sense of what's here.
Sounds good. Here, I'll read the Greek from sentence number 1.
Okay.
Potereton megan thesauron phulaxe tapaidia he echtes oikias klepse?
Right.
It's a question. Right?
Yeah. Because you got the potera at the beginning, the poterae, right? So it's a double question. So will he guard the big treasure? And who is the subject to phulaxe? Tapaidia. Will the kids guard the big treasure, or will they steal it from the house?
From the house.
Ektes oikias.
Right.
The second one, ha philosophos e rotesen e potekomen tois aphthalmois tus teus idein. The philosopher asked whether we ever had the ability, right, whether we are ever able to see the gods with our eyes. So we have 10 sentences like that, and like most introductory textbooks, whether Greek or Latin, each sentence is testing the principles contained in that chapter.
Yes. Yep. And then it's followed up by a handful of English to Greek sentences.
That's right.
When I taught this, I always would emphasize those in particular.
The English to Greek?
Yes.
Yes, much more challenging for most students.
Right, exactly. But for me personally, that was always the way that it's cemented in my mind.
For sure.
To look at. And then it ends with a more lengthy reading adapted from the Gospel of John.
Yes, John chapter 9.
Right.
So Groton says, the passage below is the first part of a 3-part story about an incident in the life of Jesus. You should find the Greek fairly easy to translate because Koine, the dialect of the New Testament, is similar to Attic. She could have put it more strongly, is descended from Attic.
Yeah.
It's like child to parent.
Yep.
Moreover, she says, its sentences tend to be short and syntactically simple. Then there's a little background to the story, and then we get adapted from the Gospel of John. Anthropos ho legomenos Jesus, a man named Jesus, pelone poese, etc.
Yeah, so this is the healing of the man born blind. Right?
And then, then we're given a gloss, right? Vocabulary help for reading on the next page. It's a long book. Hackett puts out an excellent product. It's not an expensive book. It's a very reliable way to approach the study of Attic Greek.
Yeah.
If you want to take what you might call the deductive, the grammar translation method of studying language.
Yes, it has, in comparing it to Groton and Finn, the setup is very similar, although I think it's one much more attractive.
Oh, yeah.
The examples are better. You're immersing yourself in lengthy readings much more quickly. But by and large, the similar structure of vocabulary, English to Greek, Greek to English, extended reading, next chapter.
Yep. And then on page 443, there is a word list, a vocabulary list, 443 and following, chapter by chapter. So lesson 7 reading, you get, for example, haleos, blepo, helko, emperia, esti, ekthus, etc. All of the chapters have a nice reading list containing the words that you'll have to memorize for each chapter before you get a vocabulary, both a Greek to English vocabulary and then also an English to Greek vocabulary.
Yeah, I would recommend this text
for sure.
Just as a general, approachable text for learning Greek. I do remember one complaint that I have heard about this text, and I would generally agree with it, is that I think we wait till chapter 47 to get the me verbs.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it is a kick in the gut.
Yeah, right.
Right. But
that's a common problem, and there are only so many ways to solve it.
Right.
Some students say, for Latin, the third declension is so difficult. Why didn't they put that first so that I wouldn't think it's so difficult?
Right. Yeah.
There's only so many ways to represent the material.
Exactly.
And I have become a fan of placing the difficult material sooner in any kind of approach to language so that students won't really think of it as more difficult.
Yeah. No, that's a good point.
Try to kind of fool them.
Right. I mean, I understand the other ways you kind of, you warm yourself up to that.
Right.
But yeah, it's tricky. But Dave, I believe we are up against. We're going to continue this conversation.
Yes, we are.
Right? But we are up against the clock.
Yes, indeed, Jeff. We sure are.
Yeah.
And we've got through what now? Explaining a little bit about some of the reason why a person would want to study not just Koine.
Yep.
If their goal is to read the New Testament, they should also learn Attic.
Yes.
For a variety of reasons. Mm-hmm. We've talked about 2 textbooks.
Yes, we covered the Groton and Finn text, and we just finished up talking about Anne Groton's text and
Alpha to Omega.
And next week, we're going to continue this conversation
right.
and tackle maybe 3 or 4 other texts.
The famous Hansen and Quinn text, which has a really lovely cover. And also Donald Mastronarde, which is apparently the grammatically most sophisticated of this entire group.
Okay.
And also Athanadze, and then this new one from some Ivy Leaguers. I think have you used this one before?
I have not. This is brand new to me.
Yeah, so this is Learn to Read Greek by Andrew Keller and Stephanie Russell.
All right.
Also a very attractive looking textbook. We're going to take a look. And eventually, after finishing with these, we'll move on to some New Testament books as well.
Sounds great.
But that's for a further episode. Jeff, we have some people to thank.
We do. As always, Mishka, our wonderful engineer, putting this all together so quickly and making us sound so nice coming over the airwaves. Are these wonderful musicians, Ken Tamplin, Jeff Sheets, so generous for allowing to let us to use their wonderful music and take advantage of their talents.
Yeah, you think people are getting used to the new intro and outro music? Jeff's great guitar aficionado kind of work, the thrill seeker.
I'm digging it. I hope that the audience is as well.
You can check out some of his work. He is a Kansas City guitarist and a disc dogger. He has classes where he teaches you how to play guitar, and just a really nice guy, frankly.
Fantastic.
Just a solid individual. One of his songs won the international was a runner-up in the international John Lennon songwriting competition.
Fantastic. That's great.
A song named Lakota, because Jeff is of Sioux ancestry.
Wow.
So I really like his work. It's incredible.
He's a very talented guy.
Yes.
Hey, Dave, this is a very germane question given the topic of today's episode. But what if our listeners want to learn some Latin? They want to learn some Greek. What should they do?
They should go to latinperdiem.com and check out MossMethod, which is housed now on the Latin Per Diem site. Just got a student signed up this morning, actually, to study some Latin with me. He wanted to read through Theodore Beza's notes on the marks of the true church. And so this is a video-based class where you see me teaching other students. It comes with 10 sessions and a transcript, and it's very affordable. I have a number of classes like that: Beza, Calvin, Erasmus, Cicero. The idea is you want to study Latin, but you maybe don't want the pressure. You want to study it at an advanced level, but you don't want the pressure of being called on or having to prepare the work.
Yes.
You can kind of watch as I teach others and gain a lot of the value that way in a less intense and perhaps intimidating fashion. Or if you're a beginner, you can take one of the Lingua Latina classes, which takes you ab initio, from the ground up. Same goes for Greek. I got the MossMethod. Check it out. I think you'll find it's an excellent way to gain real confidence and ability.
Fantastic. Hey, listeners, if you want a shout out, you want to write us something like José did at the top of the show, don't hesitate to drop us a note. You can write to Dave at adnauseam.com. Don't forget the V in nauseam.
That's right. Or you can contact Jeff at adnauseam.com. There's a V in there in the word nauseum.
Yes.
You can get a t-shirt. You can get a hat. You can get one of these nice Quae Nocent Docent t-shirts that shows people you are taking in the classics.
And keeping them down.
And Jeff, what are we doing next week?
Well, as we've said, we're going to continue our conversation about these intro Greek textbooks. If you are learning Greek, if you're in the classroom, if you're a teacher, you're going to want to come back.
That's right.
For the next episode.
Right.
And Dave, believe you have our gustatory parting shot.
I do. I don't know how you're going to find this one. This is from the great John Chrysostom. That is the church father who hailed from Antioch. Now, this guy knew how to use Greek. I mean, his Greek is just extraordinary and brilliant. And I was able to find a food-related quote from John Chrysostom. This is from homily or sermon number 48 on the Gospel of Matthew. And Chrysostom says, "For this reason, perhaps, food passes into excrement, that we may not be lovers of luxury."
There's a lesson to take away.
Something to think about.
It is.
Thanks for listening. Thank you.